You're listening
to the Beer O'Clock Show.
You're listening to the Beer O'Clock Show.
It's Beer O'Clock and this is the Beer O'Clock Show. My name is Mark and joining me, as always, is Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
I'm alright, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, mate.
Very good. This week we stick with our Belgian theme, but we look to the middle of England, to Twisted Barrel Brewery in Coventry with their 9% Tripel wake-up juice, but we'll get onto that in a little while. Meanwhile, what have you been drinking this week, mate? Because you've had a bit of a beery weekend.
I've had an incredible beer weekend, and I'm just going to focus on one part of that because it needs to be focused on. I went off to Norwich this weekend, mate, up at the very far end of the
Did you get your shots first?
Yes, yeah, got my shots. Had to. We also had to make sure, because it was a group of Essex lads, we had to make sure that by the time we got to Ipswich, we'd got all the jokes out as well, just in case anyone got on the train. So yeah, we went up to Norwich. The plan was to take in a few of the bars up there, a few of the beers, see what the scene's like up there. And it was a good little pub crawl that we did. We ended up doing about 7 or 8 bars. All of which were slightly different and all had a slightly different sort of feel to them and a slightly different offering. So, but sort of ranging from, I suppose, the typical sort of craft beer bar that you'd expect to see in London nowadays, with lots of sort of shiny, non-labelled taps and a board with numbers on where you had to say, well, I'll have a number, whatever, and that related to the tap. To the proper traditional old-fashioned sort of pub where beers are sold sort of on cask and on gravity. So that was quite nice to see the two different sides to things. About halfway around our crawl, we met up with a legend that is Nate. If people remember, he was our first ever guest back in season 2, Nate Dog. He met up first and he showed us some of the sites that Norwich had to offer. Took us to probably one of the best and well-known bars in Norwich, the Plasterers Arms, which had probably the best selection in terms of beers, both on the pumps and in the fridge. One of the real standouts for me was we went to a place called the Plough, which was the home of Grain Brewery's tap room as well. So, and it was nice to see kind of a tap room as well and see what the take on that was like. But yeah, it was a pretty decent weekend. And bearing in mind for me, Norwich is only sort of an hour and 20 from where I am. It's a couple of hours from London. It's certainly a place that's got a lot of good drinking habitats built within it, and of course soon to be added to that range is the what is it, mate, that you call it, the virus that is Brewdog. Will be opening up a bar in Norwich soon as well, and it looks like we saw where it was being opened up, as you can imagine, from Brewdog, fairly nondescript hoardings, completely logoed up, and craft beer is coming and all the rest of it. Looks like it's going to be a pretty big bar actually in Norwich, so may actually take away from some of those other bars, may take a little bit of custom away, but I guess we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching your check-ins and stuff, and obviously the variety of bars up there. I wondered, do they even need a Brewdog up there? It doesn't sound like they do.
Well, does London need 8 of them? Mate,
no.
Maybe that's a question for a future hot topic. How many Brewdog bars do you need? No, I mean, our route took us quite a way outside the city centre itself. So we started off in a bar that was a good 10-15 minute walk from the station, and we then had a further 10-minute cab ride to the next one, and then we walked back in. So it was, the range was quite a way outside of where the town centre is, and then the closer you get to the town centre. I mean, I think the one bar that's probably going to suffer the most from Brewdog is the Norwich Tap House, which is literally just across the road from where Brewdog is. So that might be the one. But I suppose like any new bar opening up, it's going to attract the custom initially, isn't it? People are going to want to go there because they're going to want to see what it's like, and then people may then start gravitating back towards the bars that are already there.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see, won't we? We'll have to wait for a report from Norwich.
Only time will tell on that one. What about you, mate? I think for once, looking at your check-ins, I think for once you might have a slightly different response to what have you been drinking this week.
Well, I was going to have a look on my Untapped, but Untapped's being a dickhead tonight, so I can't really tell you.
Okay,
Other than I remember I had Monkhammer from Brewdog. Speaking of Brewdog, Monkhammer, which is, tell me if I'm wrong, they're Belgian flavoured jackhammer.
Yes, yeah.
Much nicer than jackhammer. It was actually drinkable.
See, now, this is really strange. I think I'm in the minority with Monkhammer. I really didn't enjoy it. I found very little Belgian-ness about it, and I found it far more bitter than the original jackhammer. But everybody else that I've spoken to about it said, no, it's a really nice beer. So I'm wondering whether I need to actually give it a second chance and a second try.
Maybe you do. I'm just looking at my Twitter feed now. I also had Elvis juice from a can, which was much nicer than from the bottle.
Okay.
And a can of Highwire grapefruit, and you can't really go wrong with that.
Now, did you do those two side by side? Because those check-ins seem to come in very close to each other.
Yes.
Were you doing it purposely as a comparison, or did it happen by accident?
They were both in the fridge, and I grabbed them at the same time.
Okay. So as a comparison, what are your views on, I suppose, which one had the better feel to it, the better balance of the grapefruit flavours?
Good question. I would say, well, to be honest, I didn't notice huge grapefruit flavours from any of them, but I guess every fucking beer has grapefruit in it these days. It's hard to pinpoint a beer when it does have grapefruit, because they're all so much alike. I found the Highwire was my preference flavour-wise, but I thought the Elvis juice was slightly better balanced. Okay,
interesting. Might be something I need to do. I mean, I suppose they're different styles as well, because the Highwire is a pale ale, whereas the other one, the Elvis juice, is an IPA. So obviously there might be slightly different hop profiles in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Right. You got any news, mate?
Mate, there is a shit ton of news this week, so buckle yourselves in, guys, because I'm just going to fire it all at you.
All right, here's your pips. Beep, 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 beep.
Okay, so first up, Craft Beer Hour news. There was an announcement over the weekend that Craft Beer Hour have now got an option on their website where you can sign up to a mailing list that they've got, and if they get sent beers by the guys that are hosting the Craft Beer Hour, you'll be on a list that goes into a draw to possibly get some samples. So it's got to be worth doing, right? You put your name on a list, and then occasionally your name might get drawn out of a hat for free beer. That sounds like a win-win all round for me. So what you need to do is you need to head on over to www.craftbeerhour.com/samples, and you can register all your details there if you want to be part of that. Next up, we've got some news from Honest Brew, who last week released something called the Howler. This is basically a cardboard tube, and in this cardboard tube you can choose 3 cans of the finest craft beer available, and that will get delivered to your door for only £3.49. Now again, that sounds like a pretty decent beer to me. If you want to have a look at it, go over to honestbrew.co.uk/howler-shop. Got some news from the recent SEBA Festival, which is the Society of Independent Brewers, on some of the National Beer Awards. Elgoods, who are based up in Cambridge, did really, really well at these awards. They've won a gold and a silver for some of their beers. They got a gold for their cherry wheat beer, and they got a silver for the Cool Ship Fruit, which is it's one of these beers that's getting growing recognition. Cool Ship is. It's the only regional. They're the only regional brewer in the UK who are able to brew a lambic style beer, because they've got a pair of unique open cooling trays known as Cool Ship trays, and they're needed for the brewing process to allow the beer to be open to wild yeast. So I think that's certainly a beer that we need to look to feature on a future show, mate, is the Elgoods Cool Ship. I've got some news about, following on from last week's homebrew show, the Welsh homebrew competition got in touch and said, guys, could you give our competition a shout? So here it is. The Welsh homebrew competition will be on the 16th of July. Details about how to enter and where to send entries from are now on their website, which is homebrewcompetition.wales. You can check that out and you can enter your beers if you're in Wales, and you never know, you could become the Welsh Homebrewer of the Year. Some new beer news. Iron Maiden. Like, we knew this was going to happen, mate, didn't we? We knew they were just going to start rolling them off of the production line. I've announced another new variation of the Trooper range of beers. This one's going to be called Red and Black, and it's a porter that will be available in September. So it's going to be limited edition. It's from the pages of the early Robinson's Brewery books, and it's named for the colour of the beer and also for a song that appeared on their most recent album. Singer Bruce Dickinson, what he had to say about this was, "I like tasting outside the box." Not sure we all do, Bruce. Stouts and porters were virgin territory for me, so I just went by feel. I don't know. That's possibly going to be one for a future hot topic as well. How many more beers are Iron Maiden going to try and roll off under the brand Trooper? Anyway, getting on to some more exciting new beer news, and this is the news that everybody's been waiting for. It dropped last week. It's the annual release of Unhuman Cannonball Triple IPA. It will be with us on the 8th of April, which is a week today as you listen to this podcast. It's being launched at the Magic Rock Tap Room. There'll be kegs going up and down the country, and it will be online from the 11th of April. Also, to go with that, for the first time, you'll be able to get hold of a limited edition run of Human Cannonball, which is their double IPA, and that's going to be available in a can. And keep your ears open for a special Magic Rock show that we've got coming out in a week or so's time. And also, obviously, we'd have to do it, wouldn't we? April's flavour of the month, assuming we can get our hands on a couple of bottles of Unhuman Cannonball, will be us going back and having another go at Unhuman Cannonball. That, guys, could be a lot of fun, so keep your ears open for that one. And that's pretty much it for this week, mate. I mean, that's quite a lot of news this week, but there was a lot to talk about.
Indeed. So let's get into this week's beer then, mate. So, as you said at the top of the show, it's the 9% triple Wake Up Juice from Twisted Barrel Ale up in Coventry.
Now, I'm quite lucky to have had this before, and I was quite excited. This was a last-minute substitution to this season's beer list because we had a bit of a hiccup with the beers that we were supposed to feature on this show. So I got in touch with the guys at Twisted Barrel and I said, look, I was so impressed when I came down and tried your beers. How would you like to feature one of those on the show? And they just came back and said, by any chance, would it be the one that you couldn't stop going on about, which is the Wake Up Juice? And I was like, absolutely yes. So that's what we've got. We've got this wonderful Belgian triple. We've also got Carl Marshall, who works for Twisted Barrel, and he's going to be on the show at the end, just talking about the beer and the brewery and what they're up to.
Indeed. So it pours out. It's murky as fuck.
It is incredibly murky and thick. It's supposed to look like that, mate.
Okay, good.
That's intentional. Don't you worry.
Alrighty.
There's grapefruit and mango on the nose. I'll tell you what, this has got the nose of a big thick double IPA.
I'm just getting herbal floral notes off mine. A slight tickle on the nose, which might be the grapefruit. So let's get into it, buddy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's all sorts of sweet. There's orange, there's grapefruit, there's honey, there's really sweet caramel in there as well. Hardly any Belgian-y to it, which, considering it's a triple, you probably would hope for there to be a little bit more of the Belgian style in it. There's maybe a little bit of a floral hint at the end of it, but there's a lot of balance to it, and there's a lot of body as well.
Yeah, the fruitiness is really smooth. It's a very creamy beer on the palate. There's not much mid-palate bite to it. The bitterness is all around the edges. Quite thick. I think viscous feel to it a little bit. for me. But yeah, like you're saying, that there is a real honey feel to it. There's a kind of like stickiness.
Yeah, that was the first thing that really came through for me. It was like, oh, it's honey, and then there was like, oh, then there's citrus, and there's all these balances of citrusy flavours. Like I say, for me, there was a lot of orange, some grapefruit. I was getting mango on the nose. That wasn't too much there in the flavour, but the flavours do balance. There's a good malty backbone to it as well. That just helps to balance all of the flavours. It's certainly not overpowering, and it certainly doesn't have the feel that it's 9% either.
No. I mean, it's definitely got body to it, which you would expect from a beer of the percentage. But slight booziness on the nose now as well.
So like I say, I'm not going to go too much into how the beer came about and the creation of the beer, because we've let Carl do that at the end. Talk about it from the brewer's point of view. I just think it's great that this little kind of tiny brewery in the middle of England on the outskirts of Coventry are producing a Belgian triple that's as juicy and as enjoyable as this. It just shows what's going on. Maybe in some of the places that we're not really looking at the moment for our beer.
Yeah. You're saying when we opened it that it smelt almost like a double IPA with the grapefruit and the orange on it. That taste is coming through now as well. So imagine a very malty double IPA, and that's coming through on this as well. There isn't much Belgian yeast characters coming through as well, but I'm not that familiar with the triple style. It might just be that that's not necessarily always present in a triple, as is on a postcard.
From experience, I'm no expert at Belgian beers. No expert at beer by all accounts, but it would seem that from the triples that I've had, they tend to be more sweet than anything, and don't always necessarily carry the Belgian characteristics through, because that's very much being softened out by the time it gets to sort of the triple stage.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm guessing the aroma, the taste that you're getting in there, it's kind of like a breakfast juice, which is probably where the name comes from in terms of wake up juice. This is the sort of flavour, the sort of feel that you'd expect if you're sitting down and pouring yourself a glass of juice to have with your breakfast.
Yeah, it is kind of like an orange and mango juice, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those synapses just made the connection. Very tasty. So you were saying you've been up to see Twisted Barrel?
I have, yes.
You had a night out in Coventry a little while ago, didn't you?
Yeah, Carl took me down there, and it was a couple of weeks before he started working for them, but he already knew he had the job there. And the brewery wasn't actually open on the night he went down, but the guys were in and they were bottling some of their beers. So they said, you know what, why don't you come down? Obviously, all the beers are hooked up to the lines. We can serve you the beers. You can just sit, you can enjoy them. We can chat to you about the beers, and that's basically what we did. I pretty much went through as much of the Twisted Barrel range as there were on offer. And I said at the point, and I think I've got it written down somewhere, that this for me is a very early contender for what's going to be my beer of the year this year, because this was absolutely incredible. It had a slightly different feel on keg. It was even more murky than it is as we've got it from the bottle, but the flavours, it was thicker. The flavours were more pronounced. If you imagine this on sort of like steroids, then that's what it was like off their taps. A lovely little place, pretty much like any microbrewery stroke tap room that you see these days. You know, you walk in, you've got all your vessels and all your brewery kit at the back, and then you've got a lovely space for a tap room as well, balancing it out perfectly. And obviously in a place where it's absolutely gagging for some craft beer, as much as I hesitate to use the word craft, but it's very traditionally led in that area of the country.
Yeah, I can imagine. You don't hear much buzz of the craft scene from Coventry.
Not really. It's not been leading the way in the UK, has it?
No. Well, this beer is really nice. I think if they let the sweetness of the malt come through a little bit more to balance off the hoppiness, it'd be even better. But then you would need to, because the hop flavours now are pretty finely tuned. I get the feeling. So it would be nice to get more sweetness from the malt coming in, but they would need to find that balance, I think. So I think, this might be as good as they can get it, but it'd be interesting to see how this beer evolves. As they keep brewing it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly one that I would go to again and again. If people do want to try this one, eBrewer stock pretty much the entire Twisted Barrel range. And you can't really go too far wrong with hitting up their website, using our discount and getting yourself one of the mixed cases of the Twisted Barrel beers, because they are all pretty decent beers. They're kind of very exciting what they're producing up there right now.
Yes. Right, as we get towards the end, do we have an Instagram of the week, mate?
Yes, mate. This week's a big box of nothing is going to a new first-time winner this week, mate. For what is pretty much an incredible shot. Just kind of summing up summer.
Oh, wow.
Even though we're not even there yet, we've just gone to British summertime this week. But this is a fantastic picture of basically a beer on a tropical beach, palm tree in the background, sun setting. And this is from the Owl Trail, who I know listens to the show. So congratulations, mate, on winning your first ever prize. I will make sure I take the utmost care packaging it up and getting it sent up to you in the far reaches of northeast England. If you want to have your name in lights on the Beer O'Clock Show, put your own picture on Instagram, use the hashtag cheers, guys, and if it's the one that catches my eye next week, I will make sure to get you your very own personalised big box of nothing.
Right, do we have a hot topic this week, buddy?
We do indeed, mate. And once again, either people really missed Hot Topic last week, or we kind of captured something with our question this week. More votes than we've ever had before for this week's one on the poll. So we topped 200 votes this week, which is pretty good. Maybe just more people were at home because it was a long weekend. This week's question was simply, do we need craft beer bars? 63% of those that voted said yes. Only 6% said no. And the other 31% went for the option that simply said, it's a pub. Some of the comments that came through this week, and there were a lot of comments, so I've had to work really hard to kind of get the top 5 comments out this week and work out the ones that really brought something to the discussion. So Max Bobfield said, I think we're going to see an increase in tap bars, which, as I know, is something we've covered on Hot Topic before. I also think craft bars offer more expert advice and suggestions. John Rogers said, tends to find that craft beer bars are more expensive than a pub, offering craft beers alongside more traditional beers. Melissa Cole got involved and said, gah, it's a toughy one, but can you follow it up with craft beer bars need to sort their customer service out? Yes or no, please. So you know what, Melissa? Yes, that will be next week's Hot Topic. So there you go, folks. We're lining that one up for you next week. Listen, keep an eye out for that one on Twitter next Sunday evening. Stuart Harrison said it's useful. It's a useful flag to find a pub that sells good beer, but to be honest, I'm a bit bored of the craft beer bar aesthetic. And then finally, Dan Green said, until there's a good craft options in every bar and pub, craft beer bars are a necessity. Mate, what are your thoughts on this one?
Those last 2 comments, I think, sum up my views on it. I would prefer that your average local pub also offered a good craft range, because it just comes down to the variety of the beers that are in the beer market in the UK. Craft beer is still relatively small sales wise, but there's so much going on and such variety that you have to wonder why. Well, there's obvious logical reasons or logistical reasons why pubs don't offer more range on tap, at least. But it'd be good to see a wider variety of beers out there, and until we get that, then craft beer bars are the way to go, I suppose, which is a shame.
I'm not sure it's a shame, mate.
Well, what I mean by it's a shame, it would be great if your neighbourhood pub could embrace the entirety of the beer market, or the entirety of the choices available, instead of having 3 or 4 taps of Doom Bar, Foster's,
Same old, same
Landlord,
old.
so on and so on.
Yeah.
With a few bottles of Flying Dog and Punk IPA in the fridge.
That are most likely 6 months out of date.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think, again, this shows the difficulty of using Twitter sometimes to conduct these questions, because I think what I was getting at, I wasn't so much getting at, do we need craft beer bars? I think what I was getting at was, do we need bars that label themselves as craft to attract people?
Right.
So, which is obviously a completely different question.
Yeah.
But yeah, my views are, I suppose, yes, they're an important part of the beer drinking scene and culture now, because they do offer an introduction. But I completely agree with what Melissa says, that you go into some of them and they employ staff that either don't know what they're talking about, or have an attitude, or can't be bothered. And you know, I'm going to say this, for all of their faults and misgivings, Brewdog are a company that get that part right. You know, their staff training is excellent. Yeah, I can see you shaking your head. Sometimes you do get the odd cock end in.
I will say
one of
I've
their
only had one
bars.
bad experience in Brewdog. I will say that.
Exactly, and let's be fair. I've seen it happen enough. If you moan about a customer service experience, particularly on Twitter, to Brewdog, they will sort it. They'll take it into the DM. They'll talk to you about it. They'll find out what's gone on, and they'll do their best to rectify it. And I think that's a sign. You know, more people, rather than just saying, "Oh, let's open up a craft beer bar," fill it with great beers, and just then order the traditional people that, you know, are looking for a Saturday job, or you know, something that they can pay their rent with. Actually, give your staff a little bit of training. Get them to they need to know a bit about the beers, but what they need to know how to do is talk to customers as well. Find out what the customer likes, and then match that to the beers that are available. But I guess we'll get into that one a bit more next week, when we ask next week's question about should craft beer bars train their staff properly.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have plenty to say next week. So any final thoughts on this wake up juice from Twisted Barrel, mate?
As I approach the end of my glass, it's still incredibly citrusy. All of those juicy flavours are kind of coming together. The thickness is still there. The syrupy sweetness is still there. It's got a nice sticky finish to it. All in all, it's a decent beer. I'm glad Twisted Barrel stepped up and subbed this in for us this season. And I'm glad to have been able to feature it as well. From what I think are going to be one of the UK breweries to watch this year, I think.
Yeah, I quite enjoy this. I'd love to taste it when it's fresh from the source, like you managed to. Basically, stuck your mouth underneath the the bottling.
Pretty much, just hooked it into the vein.
Yeah, but for what is essentially a double IPA, a malt forward double IPA, it's really tasty. And that mango and orange combination, I love mango and orange juice. So, and the grapefruit isn't too prevalent for me, because I'm sick of the grapefruit, if I didn't make that clear enough earlier.
Yeah, clearly.
So what's coming up next week, buddy?
Next week is we're doing a Manchester Beer Week special, mate. So we've got I think it's probably widely known, but one of the driving forces behind the Manchester Beer Week is an incredibly nice chap who we've had on the show a number of times. Connor Murphy is one of the guys that's behind the Manchester Beer Week. He's coming onto the show next week to talk to us about what they're hoping to achieve with the Beer Week. What to look out for, that sort of thing. And he's managed to talk to the Beer Week sponsors, who are JW Lees, and they're supplying us with the beers to feature on next week's show. I can't at this stage tell you what those beers are, because I've not seen them. But we're featuring a selection of JW Lees beers on next week's show, and Connor will be on to chat to us as well.
Very good. It's always good to have Connor on the show. He's a lovely bloke.
Absolutely.
Many thanks to Beautiful Beers for providing the Season 9 beer box, and also to Ales by Mail, Beer Merchants and Ibria, who all, along with Beautiful Beers, offer a 10% discount to Beer O'Clock Show listeners. Just go to our website, click on the Season 9 beer list, and you'll find the links and the discount codes there. Stick around after the tinkly music for an interview with Ritchie Bosworth and Carl Marshall from Twisted Barrel. And that's it, mate. Until next week.
It's been the highlight of my week.
And mine. Bye-bye.
It's beer o'clock and I'm with Carl and Ritchie from Twisted Barrel, and we're here talking about the beer that we're featured on tonight's show, which is the Wake Up Juice, the 9% Tripel. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hello.
How you doing?
Just to mention to regular listeners who will obviously know Carl from having appeared on a previous homebrew special with us, and also he was previously on a lock-in with us as well when we used to do those. Carl, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. It's nice to hear from you again.
Nice to be on the main product of what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And Ritchie, welcome to the show for the first time.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, guys, so tell us a little bit about the beer that we've featured this week, the Wake Up Juice. In your own words, go for it.
It's very nice, but I'll let Ritchie carry on with the specifics.
Wake Up Juice started life as a friend for a beer's wedding, actually, a few years ago. They were very much into their Belgian beers, so we decided to make a very high-strength Tripel to get everyone quite lively at their wedding, and succeeded. It's a Belgian Tripel, but with a slight difference in that we do a very heavy dry hop on it with Citra hops, so it kind of veers into double IPA territory as well as being a Belgian Tripel.
Yeah, I've got to say that was what we've picked up as we went through drinking it tonight. I think if you'd done it blind, you probably would have said this was a double IPA.
Yeah. A lot of people do view it as that, but to us it did start life as a Belgian Tripel.
So, is that something you're planning to play around with in terms of the makeup of the beer, the ingredients, the brewing of it in the future? Do you want to make it a little bit more, to use a classic quote of mine, do you want to make it a little bit more Belgian-y?
I think that the issue is I've only done it once on this scale, and it's been quite well received, really, to the point where we've pretty much sold out now. So we are planning in the next iteration of it. There's a few things that we want to change slightly, but as a whole, the recipe will stay largely the same. Maybe it's just the way we tell the world what it is that needs to change slightly, really, that it's a Belgian double IPA, maybe, rather than a Tripel. I guess that's kind of something for us to decide for the next batch, really.
I suppose that would work. We're seeing more and more Belgian IPAs now, aren't we, coming out? So why not produce a Belgian double IPA?
Well, why not?
People would be all over it just simply because it has the letters D, I, P, and A in it. So guys, where did the inspiration come from for this particular beer?
Basically to make a good faithful-esque Belgian Tripel, but then to give a slight twist to it, which I guess goes back into our kind of identity as a brewery. Is we like to stick quite traditionally to beer styles, but then give our own little twist on it that takes it slightly outside that category.
Okay, so you talk about their kind of where the brewery likes to find things from. Gives us a nice segue into the next question, which is tell me about the brewery. Let's the full history of you guys starting up to where you are now.
Well, I pretty much came on board about 2 months ago now, something like that. But I've been drinking Twisted Barrel beers pretty much from when Ritchie and the directors started producing commercially. So I think Ritchie could give a little bit more background on that. Yeah,
sure. It actually grew out of the beer geek passion that most folks kind of tend to start with. We used to actually do a podcast similar to yourselves called All Hail the Ale, where we'd get together and kind of try different beers, criticise them, praise them, and that grew into a desire to maybe have a go at it ourselves, so we knew a little bit more about what we were talking about. We had our day jobs, Chris and I, that we maybe weren't too enamoured with, and we wanted to try something else. So we started homebrewing together, preparing our own recipes, maybe like doing kind of beers for people's birthdays and weddings, which is how the Wake Up Juice came about, actually. So that was how we started out. We thought after we'd done a few and people were enjoying them, that we'd like to get a bit more of a critical feedback on our beers, because the problem is when you're doing home brews for friends, for parties, for weddings, and you're essentially giving it away free to them, you get the kind of feedback like, yeah, that's awesome, but you don't really get anything that you can work with because people like free beer and that's it, really.
I'm sure after an evening at a wedding drinking Wake Up Juice, everybody would love every beer that's put in front of them.
Pretty much, yeah. It was quite a chaotic evening, that was. I had three and don't remember the rest of it, to be honest. Yeah, that led to us setting up on a commercial scale, just really to see as a bit of a hobby kind of business on the side, something that we could enjoy doing, that we pour our passion for beer into. And that led to Twisted Barrel Ale. We started out and marketed ourselves as kind of the smallest commercial brewery in the country, which we were at that point in time, only for a mere few months, I think. We were producing like on a 60-litre kit, brewing about once a fortnight, really, and then selling that to local cafes off licenses, about 120 bottles at a time. We said to ourselves, we'll give it a year and see how it goes, but deep down, we knew that we really wanted to kind of be serious about it and turn it into a proper business. So we started planning our expansion around July 2014 to expand to a 6-barrel kit and open up a brew house at Fargo Village in Coventry. That took about 9 months for us to raise the funds, set up the new brewery, and then in June 2015 we opened up to the public on a more kind of commercial scale with our own tap house, and we've been going since then.
I'm quite fortunate because thanks to Carl, I got a bit of an exclusive visit a couple of months back, and that's probably the reason why we've chose to feature you on the show. And I will just say thank you to you guys at this point, because you did kind of save us a little bit. The beers that we were supposed to be featuring on this week's show didn't quite come through, and I got in touch with you guys and said, would you be interested? And you were like, absolutely, yeah. At that time, I had no idea that you had a history of podcasting. Otherwise, we could have maybe done more with you, but there's something there for the future, I think. But yeah, the space that you've got's really nice. It's kind of got a really nice feel to it as well. How are you finding that's being taken in what isn't exactly the craft beer mecca of the UK, Coventry? How are people relating to what you're doing there?
I think for some people it's quite a breath of fresh air, especially in the West Midlands.
It was on that evening we were out, Carl. That's for sure.
It's very different in the West Midlands, and we're very much stuck on the old kind of cask, watery, twiggy beer. But it's slowly seeing a shift now into, what can we say, like craft ale now, which is good.
Yeah, I think the tap house itself has. We set out to open up a tap house, and it's almost accidentally become a pub, a bar that people go to regularly. And it wasn't necessarily really how we set out to do things, but it has become very popular. The locals have taken to it. There's still new people that come in every week that don't really understand it. The first question we get, most people visit, is, where do you make the beer? And it's quite a funny question because, they're standing yards away from this massive brewing. Like, well,
you get all that shiny stuff at the back and you're just pointing at that going, well, it's just there.
Yeah, and so that, I think people kind of understand it and get it now, but it is something very different for the West Midlands. There are other tap houses around, Green Duck, for instance, Sadler's, they have their own tap houses, but it's mainly all focused in the Black Country area. There's nothing in the Coventry direction and nothing really at all in Birmingham either. So what we're doing is very new for our area, I think, and people are getting used to it. And there's been a lot of having to kind of talk to people quite a lot to explain to them what it is that we're about and where they are, really. But that's fantastic because it's allowed us to talk more to people and to introduce them to things that they didn't really know existed, because it's not York, it's not Edinburgh, it's not Bristol, it's not London, it's Coventry, and there's literally nothing else out there like it.
Okay, so in terms of embracing that, what are the plans for the future other than trying to dial Carl in a little bit and stop him from producing crazy beers? What are your plans in terms of your beers for the coming months? What are you hoping to do with the tap room? Where do you want to take Twisted Barrel Ale in the future?
I think in the short term, we're obviously just trying to increase kind of availability and exposure of our beers. We've got some fantastic things coming up, like we're Ebria Brewer of the Month this month, so everyone who's part of the brewery club at Ebria will be getting a kind of case of our beers this month. We've got a lot of tap takeovers coming up over the next few months as well in Birmingham, Milton Keynes,
London.
Oh, London as well, yep. So that'll help. In terms of new beers, we're working on a few new recipes, aren't we, Carl?
Yeah.
What have we got? We've just done a Belgian blonde that we'll be releasing in the next few weeks. It seems to be the year of the double IPA, so we're going to be having a crack at our own double IPA as well.
Yep.
Of course, because you can't be like you say, you can't be a brewery in 2016 unless you've released a double IPA.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the cool thing to do these days. And to be honest, we've had a kind of recipe and kind of name in mind for a double IPA for a very long time, but we didn't actually feel like it was the right time to do it. But it seems now like it is. What else have we been working on? I can't remember.
Got quite a few pilot beers.
Yes,
up.
we have. Yeah.
We're going to be doing a cream ale infused with tea. We've just brewed a new batch of Inspired as well.
Yeah, we're going to be working on a Berliner Weisser as well that we're kind of just trying to get our heads around how to do that. A Vienna Lager as well is one that we'll be doing on a kind of, when we say pilot, we mean doing on our original 60-litre kit just to see how it goes. So yeah, there's quite a few little bits and bobs we're working on over the next few months. So there'll definitely be some new beers of ours hitting the shelves over the next few months.
Okay, and where can people find out more? Where can people keep up to date with what you guys are doing?
Well, guess you can follow us on Twitter, Twist Barrel Ale. I tweet a lot as well. Facebook.
If you're interested in coming to the tap house, Facebook is the place to go, really, because that's where we schedule all of our events and interact with customers mostly about what's going on at the tap house. There's also information on our website, twistedbarrelale.co.uk. But other than that, if you want to meet us face to face, obviously the tap house is a great place, or some of the tap takeover meet the brewer events we've got going on. We're at Brewdog Birmingham on the 14th of April. We'll be down on the Bermondsey Mile at Ebra on the 7th of May. Probably going to be in Milton Keynes the week after, we think.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of those places would be a good place to come and meet us.
Okay, great stuff. Well, look, guys, I really appreciate you giving up your time to chat to us about the beers and the brewery. Again, thanks for helping us out and wanting to get involved with the podcast. And good luck in the future.
No, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.